What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Cosmic Wonder. I'm your host, Warren, and today we have some news about Thor 5. And I have to say that if these reports are accurate, there's going to be a huge element to this film that is taken directly from the Secret Wars comics that could really tie Thor into the multiverse saga overall, but specifically, obviously, Avengers Secret Wars. And this report does mention Beta Ray Bill, which fans have been waiting for a long time. We've been teased with Beta Ray Bill already in Thor Ragnarok. Perhaps it is finally time for Beta Ray Bill to make his MCU appearance in the next Thor film, which sadly is being reported is going to be the last solo Thor film, but we did kind of see this coming. Thor has had a great run. He debuted with Iron Man, with Captain America, and he is still going. Chris Hemsworth has done an amazing job as Thor. Despite whatever you might think of Thor Love and Thunder, Chris Hemsworth himself has done a fantastic job. And keep in mind, he is not the one who writes and directs the films. However, he did say when talking about returning as Thor for another Thor film, he did say that the film had to be tonally different, meaning the tone for the film has to be the opposite, basically, of Thor Love and Thunder. So basically, the next Thor film that we're going to get is going to be pretty serious, which I am here for. Now, I'm sure there will be comedy as well, but that's not going to be really the main theme of the film. Like, it won't be a comedic movie, it won't be classified as a comedy, but it'll still have funny moments. There are a few things to go over with this report, so let's dive into it. But if you're new and you love Marvel, be sure to subscribe to the channel and hit that notification bell so you don't miss out on any of the latest Marvel videos. This new report about Thor 5 is coming from the insider Holyfield News. They're a new insider, but some of their reports have already come to fruition. And they state that Thor 5 is looking to start production late 2025, which means we could probably expect the film to come out 2026, late 2026, or early 2027 before Avengers Secret Wars. And that makes sense because based off of some things listed in this report, it seems like the movie will directly go into Secret Wars. In fact, I wouldn't be surprised if this would be the last movie to come out before Secret Wars. But here's something that is kind of interesting about this report. They state Gareth Edwards, Chloe Zhao, and Kenneth Branagh are top choices at Marvel to direct. Now, most people know Chloe Zhao. She directed The Eternals, and the reason that this is interesting is because we have recently heard that The Eternals is not going to get a sequel film. They're not going to get a solo sequel film, so there won't be an Eternals 2. Instead, what we've heard is that they are going to put The Eternals in another film. We're pretty much going to have a big crossover movie that's going to feature many different characters in that film, not an actual Avengers film, not like a huge in-game film, but just another film along the way of the multiverse saga leading up to Secret Wars. And a lot of people, including myself, have actually thought that the next film we could see the Eternals in could be Thor 5. We're dealing with Eternals and we're dealing with Celestials, gods. We saw Celestials in Thor Love and Thunder. And of course, the god concept is not going to stop because Hercules is going to be going after Thor in Thor 5 at the order of Zeus. So the Eternals might play a decent role in Thor 5. And if that does happen, we are assuming that the Celestials are also going to be a pretty big topic, considering that some of the Eternals got taken for Judgment. Plus, not to mention Thanos' brother Star Fox, played by Harry Styles, showed up with Pip the Troll. And based off of the post-credit, it did seem like they were going to go and try to save the other Eternals. Maybe Thor gets involved with this somehow. And that's why it's really interesting that Chloe Zhao is one of the top choices to direct this film by Marvel Studios, because she directed this movie before, and it looks like the Eternals might be in this film. Now, here's really the big part. They state Thor 5 will feature members from the Thor Corps and will revisit Valhalla. They state Valhalla is going to be revisited in the film where Thor will gain some extraordinary abilities, and Beta Ray Bill and the Thor Corps will be introduced through multiverse events. Now, again, we are in the multiverse saga. It would make sense that the movie would have multiverse components to it, especially if it's going to be one of the movies that comes out right before Avengers Secret Wars. By that point, obviously the multiverse is going to be pretty close to the brink of collapse, if not haven't already collapsed. But I'm assuming that it will probably start to collapse during the events of Thor 5, because I think this is one thing that is going to, one, bring the Thor Corps into the equation, and two, get Hercules and Thor to stop fighting each other, because we assume they are still going to go down that route. Hercules is still going to be searching for Thor, he's going to find him, and they're going to fight. But Thor and Hercules in the comics, they're buddies. They become buddies. So I'm assuming the same thing is probably going to happen in Thor 5. Now, this report does have information about the main villain, but first let's talk about the Thor Corps, because this has some major tie-ins to Secret Wars, specifically the 2015 Avengers Secret Wars Battleworld one. Now, once Battleworld was established and God Emperor Doom was established, having the power of the Beyonder, being the ruler of Battleworld, he essentially tricked the Thor Corps and used them as his personal police force. The Thor Corps was composed of a lot of different men and women, all who had the ability to lift and wield the power of Mjolnir. And there was actually a ceremony for this to see who could lift and harness the power of Mjolnir. So the ceremony and Mjolnir, and really the person as well, depending on the things that they've done in their life to make them worthy of Mjolnir, all these determined who could lift Mjolnir and become a member of the Thor Corps. And within the Thor Corps, there were a lot of different versions of Thor. We had Ultimate Thor, Eric Masterson, Throg. There were situations where Lady Sif became Thor. There was a War Machine version of Thor. There was one variant of Thor's sister who became Thor. Basically, there's been a lot of members of the Thor Corps throughout Marvel Comics. But here's one of the main takeaways from what happens in Battleworld. Jane Foster as the mighty Thor shows up and basically tells them, Dr. Doom's not good. We need to go against him. She shows up and says, brothers and sisters, you know in your hearts that my words are true. You have been deceived. God Doom is not great. He is not even good. So who will come with me and do battle? So her, with the help of Thor of Higher Avalon, managed to convince the rest of the Thor Corps to rebel against Doom. Now, obviously, Dr. Doom is not in the MCU yet. We don't even know if he's going to play a major role in the events of the multiverse saga. So as of right now, we're going to assume that this isn't the exact story route that they're going to go down. However, one route I believe they'll go down is characters and other variants of Thor who are worthy enough to wield Mjolnir and obtain the powers of Thor. And that could come from the current universe that Thor is in and other universes with other variants as well. Because there is one person who is a part of the Thor Corps, and that is Beta Ray Bill, a character that we've really been waiting for. And they've already kind of mixed up the comic origins already, because originally Stormbreaker was made specifically for Beta Ray Bill. And in the comics, Eitri made it as well, much like he made it for Thor in Avengers Infinity War. But in the comics, when Odin found out that Beta Ray Bill was worthy enough to lift Mjolnir, he had Thor and Beta Ray Bill fight to the death. They did so in Scarthium, which was a very fiery realm. Now, Bill and Thor both knocked out each other unconscious, but Bill was more resistant to the heat, which allowed him to recover and wake up first. So he was deemed the winner, but also he did save Thor from falling into lava. So basically, since Beta Ray Bill won and he was trying to protect his people, he wanted a hammer. Odin ended up making him Stormbreaker via Eitri, and ultimately Beta Ray Bill agrees to join the Asgardians in a war to stop Surtur. So a lot has already kind of happened in the MCU to make it to where Beta Ray Bill's origin story would not be the same as it was in the comics. However, I think most of us just want the character in the MCU, and we want to see him go up against Thor head to head, because they are supposed to be pretty much exactly the same strength. And again, they teased him in Thor Ragnarok. We have the statue of him. We saw it on Sakaar right next to the Hulk statue. Now, the last part to this report is that Amora the Enchantress will appear in Thor 5, and she will tie into Secret Wars. Now, if this ends up being true, it is rather interesting, because they basically stated that Hela was kind of Enchantress. They kind of put the character Enchantress into Hela when they put her on screen for Thor Ragnarok. But Enchantress does have ties to Loki in the comics, as well as being one of Thor's greatest adversaries, so perhaps they'll tie more into that storyline, especially because she has a big connection to Yggdrasil and Loki is Yggdrasil right now, which is very interesting. She's also tried to seduce Thor many different times in the comics, but in the comics, Amora was born on Asgard. She ended up running away to the lands of the Norns, and she ended up becoming an apprentice to one of the most powerful sorcerers in all of the Asgardian dimension, which is where she would learn her Asgardian magic, making her very powerful. There's a lot of ways they could tie this into Thor 5 and Secret Wars, but I am curious because despite her being one of the villains abducted by the Beyonder for Secret Wars Battleworld, she doesn't have that many connections to the multiverse as a whole. But it is possible they want her as the main villain, and honestly, if they do this, I think if they go a more magical route, it'll be fine. That'll be enough of a separation from Hela's powers to make this character truly different, because Hela and Enchantress were kind of one and the same with Ragnarok. But overall, if this ends up being true, I am super excited for Beta Ray Bill and the Thor Corps to finally enter the MCU. The Thor Corps makes a lot of sense considering we are going into Secret Wars. Plus, Jane Foster has been rumored to not be done. It's rumored she'd come back, and if we're going to visit Valhalla again in Thor 5, that makes a lot of sense. And I am excited for a serious Thor movie, and for him to get kind of an upgrade before Avengers Secret Wars, which will probably be the last film film that we see Chris Hemsworth's Thor in. This will probably be the last Thor film, last solo film, and then Secret Wars will probably be the end of Chris Hemsworth as Thor, which is incredibly sad, but he has had an incredible run. So let me know your thought about all of this news in the comments down below. Please don't forget to like this video and subscribe so you don't miss out on any of the latest Marvel news and rumors. And if you subscribe and leave a comment, you're entered in our giveaway for a chance to win a PS5 or an Xbox Series X. The winner gets to pick one item, and we pick one winner at the end of each month. You can find us on Instagram and Twitter, and a reminder, we are on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. And as always, thank you all so much for watching. Woof woof.